chicken and stuffing casserole is an easy and delicious recipe. My healthy version is a great way to stretch your meat, use up leftover bread, eat more vegetables, and just use what you have on hand at home. I started this recipe by boiling 2 chicken leg quarters. Together with the skin, they were between 1.5 and 2 pounds. I boiled them in some water with celery, carrot, bay leaf, and garlic. So basically, I made the stock while I was boiling the chicken. I boiled it on low, 2 out of 6 for an hour and a half. And then once it cooled down, I took the meat off the bone. You can use any part of the chicken that you want. Breast is fine, leftover rotisserie chicken is fine, but I really like to use chicken leg quarters. You can definitely use store-bought chicken broth or vegetable broth, but since I'm using chicken, I said, I'll just boil it and use the chicken broth. Here I have some bread. I'm using whole wheat bread, 8 slices, a total of 231 grams. This is actually fresh, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to toast my bread in my pan. I'd put a little bit of canola oil in it, and I'm just going to toast the slices gently. My bread is toasted. Honestly, I may just go with 6 slices of bread for my chicken and stuffing casserole. Not quite sure, we'll see. Now it's time to saute my vegetables. In the same pan, I have 1 tablespoon of butter, and I would say maybe 2 teaspoons-ish of canola oil. I am going to saute celery, onion, garlic, a golden delicious apple, and then also some frozen vegetables. I'm not sure which video will go up first, but you probably saw or will see these in my chicken and noodle casserole. Here I'm using 4 ounces, a little over 100 grams. I didn't measure the onion or apple. It was a small onion, a small apple, and a regular stalk of celery. Like I said, this isn't meant to be super challenging or difficult. It's just meant to be a good way to use what you have on hand. However, certain vegetables take longer to cook, so I am going to add the celery first. A little bit of onion gets in there, that's okay. But I want the celery first. I know I'm calling this chicken and stuffing casserole. Since I am a southern chef, it's more common in the South to me, and I'm sauteing these over medium heat, 3 out of 6. It's more common to call this chicken and dressing probably, but I'm calling it chicken and stuffing because it seems like more people call it that, but honestly I think it's almost the same, if not the same recipe, and honestly it's the same idea. I wanted to do this recipe, I'm going to set the timer because I'm going to do probably about 2 to 3 minutes of the celery on its own, and I'm going to turn up the heat to 4 out of 6. I wanted to do this recipe now because at the time that I am making this, there's not as much meat, not as much chicken as there usually is in the world. So I figured that people would be looking for recipes to stretch their meat, and I think this is a really good way to do that. And besides stretching meat, it's just a really good way to stretch your budget. I know a lot of people now, they're trying to save money when possible, and I think something like this is great because I used a cut of chicken that was really inexpensive. I'm using just some, I don't want to say cheap, but less expensive bread. that was on sale. I'm using some vegetables that I had, some leftover frozen vegetables, carrot, celery, things like that. Not super expensive. I just think it's a really good way to make use of what you have and have it be delicious and at least somewhat healthy. I'm going to turn the heat back down. This has been sauteing for about 2 minutes. So now I'm going to add the onion. And I'm going to let the onion go for about 2 minutes. And then I'll add the apple. And then a few minutes after that, I will add my garlic and I will cook that for 1 minute. I'm very cautious about sauteing garlic because I don't want it to burn. So when everything else is basically ready, then I'll add the garlic. And then after the garlic's done and I turn off the heat, I'll add the vegetables, because the previously frozen vegetables, because those I cooked in the microwave. I just want to soften them a little bit. Honestly, like I said, you could use a lot of different things in this. I think the key is just to make sure that they're soft, because everything is going to be soft, and if you have something that's hard, it's going to throw off the texture. I know that the apple might seem a little odd, but I got the idea when I was watching a recipe video on vegan Thanksgiving, and in the person's cornbread dressing recipe, there was apple, and I tried it once and I really liked it. So it's just something different besides adding a ton of butter. So it's been a little over 6 minutes since I added the onion, or since I added the apple. You can see that everything's starting to cook down. So now I'm going to add my finely chopped clove of garlic and cook it for 1 more minute while stirring constantly, because like I said, I don't want the garlic to burn. That's why my technique is to add the garlic right before everything else is done. That way you don't have to worry about it burning and being bitter. And then once this is done, I will add the cooked, previously frozen vegetables, and I will turn off the heat, and then I will get to preparing the bread. My sauteed vegetables are done. They look and smell amazing. I'm going to put them off to the side. And now for the bread. All I'm going to do is cut it into cubes like this. So I'm going to go down. And this is still a bit soft, but that's okay. If you're having trouble cutting it, then just fold it over like that. I have an 8x8 casserole dish that I grease with butter. And now, like I said earlier, you could do this in a separate bowl, but I'm not going to. And I actually decided to use all 8 slices of bread. So this is 8 slices of bread, 230 grams. I'm going to add the chicken. This is quite a bit of chicken for this. Like I said earlier, I made the broth while I boiled the chicken, and I used 2 bay leaves, and that really perfumed the broth itself and perfumed the chicken. I can really sense and just feel that bay leaf, and when I taste it too, it's really, really good. So honestly, I think bay leaf is a secret ingredient in a lot of things. Now I have my sauteed vegetables. The hardest part of this is finding the right amount of liquid to put in, because you want it to be moist but not too moist. Honestly, it is a bit tricky, but I feel like if you add a little bit too much, you'll know, and all you have to do is just cook it a little bit longer and it will evaporate. It's not the end of the world. There. It's a lot of apple. Maybe a little more apple than I thought I was going to have, but that's okay. So honestly, I think it's going to be nice. And what was I going to say? Oh, what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure in cups the amount of broth that I add. So I'm going to do 1 cup at a time. So this is 1 cup. I think I'm going to have to add more than just 1 cup, but if you're doing something for the first time, or you're adding an ingredient that's strong like lemon juice, it's always a good idea to add whatever you need to add in stages, because you can always add more, but you cannot take away. I'm going to add another cup. And I actually might add some more bread to this, because it's looking like it's more vegetables and chicken than bread. And honestly, right here I think is a good consistency. I think I actually added a little bit too much broth, but once it sits, I think it'll be okay. I'm actually going to toast up a couple more pieces of bread, and I'm going to add them to this. I added 2 more slices of bread for a total of, I'm guessing, 275 grams of bread. And actually, I think this is a really good hydration level. I packed it down, and when you press along the sides, you'll see that there's liquid that comes to the top, but it's not flooding. So if you press down on it, you should be able to see a little bit of liquid come through, even in the middle here. See, there's a little bit of liquid that comes in around the spoon, but not a lot. That, I think, is a good hydration level. There is an egg which I'm going to add just to keep it together to help with binding, but before I do, I'm going to add my spices. The broth had no salt or anything, so I'm doing half a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper, a teaspoon of onion powder, a teaspoon of garlic powder, half a teaspoon of sage, half a teaspoon of oregano, half a teaspoon of parsley, and 1 teaspoon of poultry seasoning. I'm just going to rub it all in my fingers. Break up the sage and release all the flavors. Smells incredible. Now I'm just going to put that into my stuffing casserole, my chicken and stuffing casserole. One thing about chicken and stuffing casserole or dressing is that I feel like you need to add more spices to it than you think you do if you want it to be really, really flavorful. I don't know why, but I just feel like it takes more than you would think. So don't be afraid to have your spices off to the side. Your garlic powder, onion powder, salt, pepper, poultry seasoning, thyme, whatever you have that off to the side and just keep adding to it. And find out what you like. I know I like this, and I think for an 8x8 dish it's going to take between half a teaspoon and a teaspoon of whatever you're using to really flavor it. So now I'm going to give it a try. Good. I think maybe it could use a little bit more salt, but is this supposed to be a healthy version? But honestly, it's really, really good. So if you wanted to adjust, here I'll show you. I'm gonna add a touch bit more salt and a touch more black pepper. Like I said, just adjust. If you try it and you think it needs a little more of something, add a little bit more. I'm going to try it again. Perfect. Now I'm going to add my egg. I'm going to break off to the side. Actually, I will beat this. I'm going to preheat my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm going to start this covered for half an hour, and then I'm going to take off the foil, and I'm going to turn up the heat to 375, and I'm going to cook it uncovered. First I'm cooking it covered just to make sure it's cooked through, and then I'm going to cook it uncovered at a higher temperature to try to get kind of a crust on the top. The chicken and stuffing casserole just came out of the oven. It was in at 350 covered for half an hour, and then 375 uncovered for half an hour. When I first took it out, it was bubbling very slightly around the edge here. And when I jiggle it, it moves, but not a ton. I think this is right where I want it to be. My chicken and stuffing casserole has now been out of the oven for half an hour, and I am ready to dig in. Like I said, this is a healthier version because a lot of chicken and stuffing or chicken and dressing casserole recipes, they involve canned milk, or a can of soup like cream of chicken soup or cream of mushroom soup, a ton of butter. Sometimes there's cheese on the top, which isn't necessarily bad, but this is definitely a healthier version. Now let's give this healthy chicken and stuffing casserole recipe a try. You can see the chicken, the vegetables, the apple. Very good. This is actually exceptional. Perfect amount of seasoning. I like the sweetness from the apple and the carrots and the corn. The whole wheat bread is very flavorful. The chicken itself, the celery. This is a slam dunk. Honestly, maybe it could use another 5 minutes in the oven because it is slightly watery at the bottom, but not too bad. I think if it sits a little bit longer, it'll firm up. But this is delicious. Like I said, it's a healthy version. No cream of chicken soup. No cream. No obscene amounts of butter. Just some chicken broth. And when I boiled the chicken, I took off the skin and most of the fat. So this really isn't that fatty. It's a great way to stretch meat. Use up some old bread, use up an apple, use up some vegetables, and do so in a filling way. and also to use the liquid in which you boil the chicken and make the stock, because there's nutrients in that. So yeah, be sure to give this a try. I know you'll love it. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.